Okay, continuing on in Chapter 8 with factoring expressions and solving by factoring. 8.2 is factoring trinomials of the form x squared plus bx plus c. Now, if we go back and go and unfactor, and we have two binomial factors here, and we FOIL them back out. So basically, we're going to take the x times x, then the x times the q, then the p times x, then the p times q. We get this expression here, x squared plus qx plus px plus pq. Now, we notice that these two have a common term of x, and so we could factor that x out, and we get the q plus p in here. And now if we compare this equation to the type of formula we're working with, this trinomials, x squared plus bx plus c, if we compare those, we notice that the q plus p is equal to the b, kind of in that same area, and the p times q is equal to the c. And so that's kind of going to help us be able to factor these x squared plus bx plus c things, because what we can do is we can look at the c and say, okay, what two factors basically multiply together to give me c, but when I add the same two factors, they give me b. Okay, and so that's what we're going to do all these factorings that we're going to look at today. We're going to see what two factors of c, multiply together to give us c, but when we add them, we get b. Now the key difference is sometimes we're going to have pluses and we're going to have minuses in those two positions. So those are going to change things a little bit, but overall, that's going to be our key goal, is trying to figure out the factors of c to get p times q, and that when those two added together give us the b. So let's look at our first one here. And we're going to look at 72. So first off, let's just find our factors of 72. Well, that's 1 times 72. Now, if I multiply those together, I get 72, but if I add them, I get 73. And I'm looking to have terms equal 17. So let's go to the next one. 2 times 36. Well, again, that's going to give us 38, not 17. And then 3 times, we get 24, and that's 27, not 17. If we take 4 times 18, and that's still over 17. 5 doesn't work. 6, well, that'll be 6 times 12. Well, that'll give us 18, not 17. 7 doesn't work. 8, well, that's 8 times 9. Aha, guess what? 8 plus 9 is 17. So that's the one we're going to do. So that's my first step. And then after that, I kind of go, okay, well, I know I'm going to factor into two binomials. What's the factors of p squared? Well, that's just p and p. Now, like I said, it works with plus and plus like this for what we learned up here. And so all we had to do is make sure that multiplied together, they give us 72, and added together, they give us the 17. And then we can say, okay, well, one's going to be plus 8 and one's going to be plus 9. Now the key difference is maybe the middle term is a negative and then the other term is positive. That'll cause us to do another way. And then sometimes this will be maybe either positive or negative, and this is negative. That's going to cause us to do something else. And we'll look at examples of each of those. But that would then be our factored form of p squared plus 17p plus 72. And if we multiplied it back out, that's going to give us p squared. Then 9p plus 8p is 17p, and plus 72, okay? So let's keep looking at these. Now here's a prime example of we have different terms here and here. Now when we multiply, if we go back to our previous one, when we multiplied, we had a plus 8 times a plus 9. That gave us a plus 72. Well, here, to get the negative here, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have both of them be negative, because if we take a negative times a negative, we'll get our positive, which is what we want. But what we have to get here is we're going to have to have a negative plus a negative, and that'll give us the negative here. And so this time, we're going to look at two terms that are negative added together that give us the middle term. But when we do it initially, I'm just going to look at 8. Well, that's going to be 1 times 8. Okay, well, 1 plus 8 is 9. Or if we think about it, a minus 1 times a minus 8, well, that's going to be a plus 8, which is what we need here. And if we take a minus 1 plus a minus 8, that's going to give us a minus 9, which is what we need here. And so our terms then are going to be the minus 1 and minus 8. And that's what we would expect we're going to have when we do this. Sometimes I just write out the first part I know. Then the next part I'm like, okay, to get to two of them to get positive, but this to be negative, they both have to be negative. And then at that point, I just look at this and say, okay, what are the factors that add to 9? Well, 8 plus 1 is 9. And then I can just say, well, that's 1 and that's 8. But if I wanted to do it the full way, then I would say, okay, well, what's negative 1 times negative 8? Well, that's positive 8. Negative 1 plus negative 8, that's going to be the negative 9. And so then that would be my factored form of n squared minus 9n plus 8. And again, multiplying it back out, n squared minus 8n minus 1n, so that's going to give us minus 9n, and then plus 8 when we multiply that. So that would be how I would factor that one. Now this one's going to work the same way. I see that I have a plus here and a minus here. And so to get the plus but the minuses, I'm going to have to take a minus and a minus. So then I know I have n minus and I have n minus. Now I just have to find two factors of 15 that add to 8. Okay, and then I've already got the signs taken care of and I don't have to worry about that. So 15, well, that's going to be 1 times 15. We'll add those together, we get 16. And 2 doesn't work, so 3 times 5, well, that'll give us 15. And if we add those two together, we get 8. So then I can say, well, that's 3, and that's 5. Now I can check. N times n is n squared. Then I have n times a minus 5 is minus 5n. Then I have a minus 3n, so minus 5 minus 3 is minus 8. And a minus 3 times a minus 5 is plus 15. And so now I have this factored, okay? So let's try some more. All right, sometimes, here we have kind of a double whammy. We have the negative here and a positive here. We also have an extra term here with the n's. Okay, so what are we going to do there? Well, I'm going to just say, okay, well, we're going to factor this. And we're going to have m squared can only be factored to m and m. And then n squared, well, that's going to give me an n and an n. Now with this one, when I have a plus and a minus like this, a plus here and a minus here, I know one term has to be plus and the other term has to be minus. And in this case, the larger term has to be the positive. So the larger of whatever two factors are going to be positive. And then it's going to be this one basically minus that one if we think about it, okay? And so I could say, well, one of them is going to be plus, one of them is going to be minus, and the larger I said is going to be positive. So let's look at terms of 8. Well, that's going to be 1 times 8. Now the larger one, if we take that minus the smaller, that's going to give me 7. Well, I need 2, so that's not going to work. Now we have 2 times 4. Now the larger one minus the smaller one, 4 minus 2 is 2. Aha, that's what we need. So I want the larger to be positive. So I put that there. I want the other one to be the negative. So I put that there. And now I should have my factored form. So if I take m times m, that's m squared. M times a minus 2m n. Well, m times a minus 2n is going to give us a minus 2mn. Then we have plus 4n times m, so it's going to be plus 4nm. So it's going to be 4nm minus 2nm is going to give us 2mn. So that's what we have here. And then plus 4n times a minus 2n is going to give us a minus 8n squared. And so that then would be our thing. So when we have the negative here and the positive here, what we're going to do is the larger sign is going to be the sign of the middle one. So we could have a negative in this place too, and that means the sign would be a negative instead of the positive. So it all depends on what that sign is, on which one is going to be the larger term. All right, so this one, guess what? We look at this and we can say, hey, 5 is a factor of each of those terms. So before I do anything, I'm going to pull out the GCF, which is 5. And that gives me a squared plus 12a plus 20. Okay, so basically I just divide everything by 5. And so if I multiplied it back out, it'd be 5a squared plus 60a plus 100. And so now I have to factor this instead. Okay, so that you could factor that, but because we have that common term, we have to pull that out front. So then what we're going to have is 5 times, we'll have two binomials. we'll have an A, we'll have an A. Well, these are both plus, so then I know that's going to be a plus and a plus. And so now I need two factors of 20 that add to 12. Well, let's look here. So we have 20. That's 1 times 20. And then we have, that's 21, so that doesn't work. Then we have 2 times 10. Well, guess what? 2 plus 10 is 12, so that works. And so we have 2 and 10. Okay. And so then if I multiply this back out, I'll have a squared and then plus 10a plus 2a, so that's 12a, plus 20. And so I'm at this point. Then if I multiply the 5 back out, I'm back up to here. And so all of this is the factored form. You have to keep that 5 out plus the two binomials, and that's your completely factored form. All right. So here we have another one, and they're both plus again. So what does that tell us? That's going to give us a plus on both of them. So we're going to have x plus, we're going to have x plus. Okay. Now we need factors of 40 that add to 13. Well, 1 times 40 is not going to add it. That's 41. 2 times 20, well, that's going to give us 22. 3 doesn't work. 4, that's going to be 4 times 10. That'll give us 14. Close, but not what we need. Now 5, that's going to be 5 times 8. Well, 5 plus 8 is 13. So now we found our value we need. And so this one's 5. This one's 8. And you could put 8, then 5. It doesn't matter. As long as everything's the same and it works, this is going to be the same answers because we can write multiplication in either order. And so that would be our factored form of this. To check, x times x is x squared. X times 8, 8x, 5x, so that's 13x, and then plus 40. Okay. All right, so here we're back to one where we have the negative here and a positive here. So we're going to have a positive and a negative, and that larger one has to be positive because that's what sign is in the middle here. And so now we just have to find where the factors of 30, when we subtract them, the larger minus the smaller, we get a 7. So 1 times 30, well, 30 minus 1 is 29, so that doesn't work. 2 times 15, well, 15 minus 2 is 13, so that doesn't work. Then we have 3 times 10. 10 minus 3 is 7. Haha, there we go. That's what we need. And so we'll have P and P. And then we're going to have plus 10 because we need the plus one to be larger to get that middle term there. And this other one is going to be a minus 3. And again, you could have put P minus 3 and P plus 10. And either way you write this, it's going to be the same thing because if you multiply it back out, you get P squared, then minus 3P plus 10P. So 10 minus 3 is 7. And then minus 30. Same would work with there. So either one of those answers written in either order will give you the same value. All right, so let's look at another one. Okay, so here we have the thing where we have the negative here and we have a positive here. And so the only way that it's going to work is if they're both negative. So with that, we know we're going to have u minus and u minus. Now we know we're also going to have a v and a v. So now we just have to find that two values multiplied together give us 14. And when we add them together, we get 9. So 14, that's going to be 1 times 14. Well, that's going to give us 15, not 9. And then 2 times 7. Well, 2 plus 7 is 9, so we've found our answer. And since they're both the same, both going to be negative, it doesn't matter which one we put first. And that would be our factored form. Okay. And if we multiply it back out, u times u is u squared. U times a minus 7v is going to be a minus 7uv. Here we're going to have a minus 2uv, so minus 2 minus 7 is minus 9uv. And here a minus 2 times a minus 7 is going to give us 14. That's a v squared, okay? Have to read your own writing here. All right, so that's that one, and it works out. Okay, here we got another one where it looks like we have a common factor we can pull out of everything. So we can pull out that 5 again. That gives us v squared plus 4v minus 5. Now we know that's going to be 5 times v and v. Now here, with this being negative, this being positive, we know one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative, and the larger is going to be the positive. So then we're going to have a plus and a minus, and when we find it, the larger one has to be the positive, and so basically we're going to find two terms and then subtract them that give us the 4. So 5 is 1 times 5. And 5 minus 1 is 4, so we didn't have to go very far there. And the larger one, again, has to be the positive, so that's going to be 5. The smaller one is the negative, and that's going to be the 1. Multiplying it back out, we'll have v squared. Then minus v plus 5v, so that's going to be 5 minus 1 is 4v. And then minus 5. So we're back at this point. Then if we distribute here, we have 5v squared plus 20v minus 25. And so again, that 5 is part of the factored form, and so you need to leave it in there, and so you have basically three terms: the 5, the v plus 5, and the v minus 1. All right, so let's look at this one. Now, hey, you know what? We have, again, something that looks like we can divide by 6. So if we pull out a 6, what do we have? Well, 6 divided by that's 1, so it's m squared. 36 divided by 6 is 6, mn. And if we take 6 into 162, that's going to give us a 2. That's going to give us 42. So that's going to be a minus 27 n squared. All right. So what do we have here? Well, that's going to be 6 times m, and that's going to be m. Now we also know there's going to be an n on the last term. And now what do we know about this? Well, here, not m. We're going to have a positive and a negative. And what's their middle term? It's negative. So this time, the larger one has to be negative. So usually we've been working with them and they always end up being positive. Well, this is one where we actually have the middle term has to be negative. So the larger one of these, whichever one it is going to be the negative. So larger will be, I'll put it first because it's going to be negative. So now I'm looking at two terms, 27. Well, 1 times 27, and I'm going to take the difference. 27 minus 1 is 26. Well, I need 6, so that doesn't work. And then what we have is 2 doesn't work, 3 does. So 3 times 9, that'll give us 27. And 9 minus 3 is 6. Well, that's what I want. And again, the larger one has to be negative, so I'll put that there. And the smaller one has to be positive, so I'll put that there. And so now I have my factored form. To check it, I can take m times m, and I get m squared. M times a 3n is going to be a plus 3mn. Then here it's going to be a minus 9mn. And minus 9 plus 3 is a minus 6mn. Then I have a minus 9 times a 3. That's going to give me a negative 27. And then n times n is n squared. And so I have this. And if I multiply this back out, I have 6m squared. Then minus 36mn. And then minus 162n squared. And so that is the factored form. And again, remember to leave your 6 in there because that's part of the factored form. All right. So here we're back to a simple one. We have plus and plus, so we're going to have h plus and h plus. And so factors of 3, when we add them together, they give us 2. Well, there's only one factor of 3, and that's 1 and 3. And when you add those together, you get 4, not 2. So this is one that's tricky because what happens is this is called a prime. And so basically, it's not factorable. Okay, so you'll run into these every once in a while, and so what happens is you're going to have, both of them being plus or both of them maybe being minus or whatever, but when you find all the factors, none of them work to give you that middle term, and that's the key. So you have to try all the factors, and sometimes it just doesn't work, and so then you have to just say it's prime and it's not factorable. Okay, and that's all I have for you today for 8.2.